My name is Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules, and this is my tale. My story begins long before I was born. My mother Alcmene was a virtuous and beautiful woman married to Amphitryon, a noble warrior. One night, Zeus, the king of the gods, and my father visited her disguised as her husband. From their union I was conceived, but my birth was not to be without trouble. Hera, furious and unable to forgive Zeus, was determined to prevent my birth and ensure my downfall. To do this, she commanded Hippolyta, the goddess of childbirth, to delay my delivery. Despite her efforts, my mother gave birth to me with the help of a clever maid, Galantis, who tricked Hippolyta into allowing the birth. But this did not stop Hera. She sent 2 serpents to my crib to kill me while I was still an infant. Even as a newborn, I displayed extraordinary strength. I strangled the serpents with my tiny hands, a feat that foreshadowed the great deeds I would later accomplish. I grew up in the royal household of Thebes, where I was nurtured and educated in the ways of both intellect and combat. My early education included lessons from the finest tutors. Linus, a renowned musician, taught me to play the lyre. From a young age, I excelled in archery, chariot driving, wrestling, and swordsmanship. My strength and skill in these disciplines surpassed all expectations, earning me a reputation as a formidable warrior even before I reached manhood. But my strength often felt more like a curse. While I excelled in physical feats, the delicate art of music seemed beyond my reach. Linus' corrections, though well-meaning, stirred a deep frustration within me. One day, after a particularly difficult lesson, I lost control. Linus corrected me once more, and in a fit of rage, I struck him with the lyre. The force of the blow, unintended yet unstoppable, killed him instantly. When I was tried for murder, I quoted a law of Diomedes, who laid it down that whoever defends himself against a wrongful aggressor shall go free, and so I was acquitted. Among the many prophecies surrounding my life, one from the blind seer Tiresias stood out. Tiresias foretold that I would achieve immortality through my labors and hardships. This prophecy set the stage for the trials that would define my life. It was a destiny I embraced. As I grew older, my strength and courage became well known throughout Thebes. One of my first significant challenges was slaying a ferocious lion that terrorized the region of Mount Olympus. This lion had been preying upon the flocks and shepherds, spreading fear among the people. I trekked it through the rocky terrain of Mount Olympus. When I finally found the beast, we engaged in a brutal struggle. The lion's hide was tough and impervious to my weapons, but I refused to give up. After a fierce battle, I managed to overpower the lion by wrestling it to the ground and strangling it with my bare hands. The victory was hard fought and earned me great respect and admiration from the people of Thebes. Another significant challenge came from the Minions, a warlike people who had long oppressed Thebes. They demanded a heavy tribute from our city, taking our resources and leaving us weakened and vulnerable. Taking up the call to defend my city, I led the Thebans in revolt against the Minions. The battle was intense and grueling. I fought with all my might, using both my physical prowess and strategic acumen. Our victory over the Minions was decisive. We broke their hold on Thebes, freeing our people from their oppression. This triumph solidified my status as a hero and protector, and my name was celebrated throughout the land. Even though I did many heroic things, my life was full of tragedy. Hera, who hated me deeply, took a terrible revenge. She made me go mad, and in my madness, I killed my wife, Megra, and our children. When I came back to my senses and realized what I'd done, I was overwhelmed with grief and guilt. This horrible event changed my life forever, making me desperate to find a way to make up for my actions. In my quest for atonement, I sought the counsel of the Oracle of Delphi. The oracle instructed me to serve King Eurystheus of Tiryns for 12 years and perform a series of labors that would purify my soul. Little did I know, Hera influenced Eurystheus to make sure that each labor was designed to be nearly impossible. But I was determined to succeed and cleanse my soul of the guilt and grief that haunted me.
Heracles, your first task is one that even the bravest of men have failed to accomplish. In the hills of Nemea, there is a lion, no ordinary beast, but a monster whose hide is impervious to any weapon. It has terrorized the region for years, killing livestock and men alike. Go, slay the Nemean lion, and bring its hide to me as proof of your success.
I could see the cunning in Eurystheus' eyes. He thought this task would be my end. But I accepted the labor, knowing that I'd faced fearsome beasts before. I set out for Nemea, where the villagers spoke of the lion in hushed voices, warning me of its strength and invincibility. The lion's lair was in the hills, a dark cave where the beast could strike from the shadows. When I finally came face to face with the lion, its size and power were overwhelming. Its mane was like a dark cloud, and its golden eyes burned with malice. I loosed an arrow, striking it straight in the chest, but as I feared, the arrow bounced harmlessly off its impenetrable hide. My sword fared no better, glancing off the beast as if it were made of stone. With no other option, I dropped my weapons and rushed at the lion with my bare hands. We wrestled fiercely, the lion snapping and threshing, trying to bring me down. Its claws tore at my skin, but I held on, gripping its throat and using all my strength to choke the life out of the beast. Knowing that its hide was too tough for any blade, I used the lion's own claws to skin it, taking the pelt as both armor and a symbol of my victory. When I returned to Eurystheus with the lion's hide, I saw the fear in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to succeed. But I knew this was only the beginning of Eurystheus' trials.
Heracles, your next labor will not be so simple as slaying a mere lion. This time, you are to face the Hydra, a serpent-like beast with multiple heads that lurks in the swampy region of Lerna. But beware, for this creature is far more dangerous than any you've encountered before. Every time a head is cut off, 2 more grow in its place.
I traveled to the swamps of Lerna, accompanied by my nephew Aeolus, who volunteered to assist me. The landscape was as foreboding as the tales had said. The air was thick with the stench of rot, and the ground oozed with poisonous sludge. It was as if the swamp itself was alive with malice, a perfect home for a creature of such evil. As we reached the Hydra's lair, the beast emerged from the murky waters, its many heads twisting and writhing, each one hissing with venomous intent. I attacked swiftly, severing one of its heads with my sword, only to see 2 more sprout from the bloody stump. It was clear, no matter how many heads I cut off, the Hydra would only grow stronger. But Aeolus, quick-witted and resourceful, had an idea. As I severed each head, he cauterized the neck stumps with fire, preventing them from growing back. It was a grueling battle. The Hydra thrashed violently, its head snapping at us, its foul breath burning in our lungs. After a fierce struggle, only the Hydra's central head remained, the one that could not be destroyed. Knowing it was immortal, I severed it with all my strength and buried it deep beneath a massive rock, ensuring it could never rise again. We returned to Eurystheus, carrying the remains of the Hydra. I could see the unease in his face. He hadn't expected me to survive, much less to bring proof of the beast's defeat.
So he conquered even the Hydra, but no matter, he did not fight it alone. Perhaps it's time I make these tasks truly impossible for him. Heracles, your next task will require more than brute strength. You are to capture the Ceryneian hind, a sacred deer of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Bring the hind back to me, alive.
This labor was different. It wasn't about facing a monstrous beast or battling for my life. The Ceryneian hind was a creature of beauty, sacred to Artemis. I knew that hurting it would bring the wrath of the goddess upon me, so I had to be careful. But capturing it alive? That would be a challenge all on its own. I began my pursuit, tracking the hind through the dense forests and across the steep mountains of Greece. Its golden antlers flashed like lightning as it bounded away, always just beyond my reach. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The hind seemed to disappear and reappear at will, as though the very earth was aiding its escape. After nearly a year of chasing, I finally saw my chance. The hind had paused to drink from a stream, its guard momentarily lowered. I approached slowly, careful not to startle it. With one swift movement, I caught it by its golden antlers. My victory was short-lived, for as soon as I captured the hind, Artemis appeared, her eyes blazing with fury. I bowed before the goddess and explained the situation. I told her of Eurystheus' command and that I had no choice in the matter. I swore to the goddess that I would release the hind once my labor was complete, and she allowed me to continue my journey. I brought the Ceryneian hind to Eurystheus, who was overjoyed to see it in his possession. He imagined keeping the sacred creature for himself, but I kept my promise to Artemis. As soon as the labor was deemed complete, I set the hind free, watching it disappear into the forest once again.
Your next labor is no simple task. You are to capture the Erymanthian boar, a beast of immense size and strength, known for tearing through villages and ravaging the land. But hear me well, you are not to kill it. Bring it back alive.
I knew Eurystheus thought this task would break me. Facing such a beast while somehow keeping it alive wasn't easy, but I'd faced worse. So, I set off for the mountains of Erymanthus, where the boar was set to roam. The higher I climbed, the colder the air grew, and soon the snow was up to my knees. On my journey through the mountains, I visited an old friend, Pholus, the kind-hearted centaur who lived in the caves. He welcomed me warmly, offering food and wine, and we sat by the fire, talking of the labor ahead. The scent of the wine we shared reached the nearby centaurs, who were less welcoming. Soon they stormed into the cave, accusing me of bringing trouble with me. What started as an argument quickly turned into a full-blown fight. The centaurs attacked in a frenzy, their wild nature unleashed. I defended myself with my bow and arrows, trying to keep them at bay, but the chaos of the battle brought unintended tragedy. One of my poisoned arrows, coated in the venom of the Hydra, struck Pholus by accident. As the centaurs retreated, I turned to see my friend Pholus lying lifeless, a victim of the very battle he had tried to prevent. Grief weighed heavily on me as I buried him, vowing to complete my task in his honor. After burying Pholus, I continued my journey up the mountain, the cold biting at my skin, but the sound of the boar's furious grunts kept me going. When I finally spotted the creature, it was even more fearsome than the stories had described. Massive, with tusks as sharp as blades, the boar was tearing through the snow like a storm. The boar charged at me, its hooves shaking the earth beneath it. I stood my ground, waiting for the perfect moment. Just as it lunged, I leapt aside, driving it into a snowdrift where its movements were slowed by the deep snow. Using my strength, I wrestled the creature into submission, binding its legs with thick ropes. I dragged the boar back down the mountain and returned to Eurystheus. The moment he laid eyes on the beast, terror struck him. He turned pale and scrambled to hide in a large jar, trembling as he peered out.
Take it away. Take that monster away. The labor is complete. Just get it out of here. This next task is designed to humiliate you. You are to clean the Augean stables, filthy and neglected for over 30 years. Thousands of cattle live there, and no man has ever dared attempt the task. And just to ensure it breaks your spirit, you are to clean it in a single day. Good luck.
The stench hit me long before I arrived. The Augean stables were worse than I imagined. Thousands of cattle filled the filthy, knee-deep muck that coated the ground. Yet, I had no intention of spending the day knee-deep in filth. I had a better plan. When I met with King Augeas, I made him an offer. King Augeas, if I clean your stables in a single day, will you give me a tenth of your cattle?
You clean the stables in a day? Impossible. If you can do it, Heracles, you shall have your reward, but don't expect to succeed.
With the deal in place, I surveyed the land. The Alpheus and Peneus rivers flowed nearby, and that gave me an idea. Instead of using my hands to shovel the endless piles of manure, I would use nature itself. I began by tearing down 2 sections of the stable walls and rerouting the rivers to flow directly through the stables. The force of the water swept through the filth, washing it away in a matter of hours. What could have taken days, if not weeks, was done by sunset. The stables were spotless, and I didn't lift a single shovel. I returned to King Augeas to claim my reward, but as soon as he saw what I had done, he reneged on our deal.
You tricked me, Heracles. That wasn't labor. You used the rivers. I refuse to give you a single head of cattle.
The king's refusal to honor his word didn't bother me as much as I thought. Eurystheus would surely count the labor as complete. After all, I'd done exactly what he had asked. I cleaned the Augean stables in a single day. When I returned to Eurystheus, I was met with a smug grin.
Heracles, you may have cleaned the stables, but you were promised a reward. Since you accepted payment, I declare this labor void. It will not count toward your tasks. You still have 7 labors remaining.
I clenched my fists, my patience wearing thin. Eurystheus' schemes were growing more insidious by the day, but I would not let his petty manipulations deter me.
Heracles, your next task will take you to the Stymphalian marsh. There you'll find a flock of deadly birds with sharp metallic feathers. These creatures terrorize the countryside, piercing armor and flesh with their feathers and destroying crops with their poisonous droppings. Your task is to rid the land of them. Let's see how you handle an enemy that can strike from the sky.
When I arrived at the marsh, the sight was enough to make even the bravest warrior pause. The water was dark and stagnant, a perfect breeding ground for death. Above it, the Stymphalian birds circled like shadows, their metallic feathers glinting in the sunlight. Their screeching echoed across the marsh, a haunting reminder of what was to come. I quickly realized I couldn't take them down one by one. They were too numerous, and I would never be able to get close enough before they took flight. I needed help, something to draw them out of their hiding places. It was then that Athena, the goddess of wisdom, appeared before me.
Heracles, brute strength alone won't solve this. Take this rattle, forged by Hephaestus himself. The noise will drive the birds from the marsh, forcing them into the air.
The rattle was small, but I knew better than to underestimate a gift from the gods. With a nod of thanks to Athena, I set to work. I approached the marsh and shook the rattle with all my might. The noise was like nothing I'd ever heard before, sharp, piercing, and relentless. The effect was immediate. The birds, startled and confused, began to rise from the marsh, their feathers bristling as they took to the skies. As soon as they were airborne, I drew my bow and let loose a volley of arrows. One by one, the birds fell from the sky, their metallic feathers clattering as they hit the ground. It was a grueling task. Every time I thought I had rid the marsh of them, more appeared, but I pressed on, my arrows flying true. Eventually, the marsh was silent. The Stymphalian birds had either fled or been brought down by my arrows. The sky was clear, and the once deadly marsh was now safe for the people of the surrounding lands. With the labor complete, I gathered my weapons and returned to Eurystheus, knowing he would have some comment waiting for me. As I expected, Eurystheus was waiting with his usual smug look.
So, you've cleared the marsh of its birds. But tell me, Heracles, how many more labors will it take before even you falter? Your next task takes you to the island of Crete. There, you will capture the Cretan bull, a monstrous beast that has been wreaking havoc across the land. It tramples fields and flattens homes, and its strength is matched only by its rage. Bring it back to me, alive. Let's see how you handle a creature that can level entire villages with a single charge.
The Cretan bull was no ordinary beast. Legend said that Poseidon himself had sent it to King Minos as a gift, but when Minos defied the god, refusing to sacrifice the bull, Poseidon turned the creature wild. Since then, the bull had terrorized the island, its rage unchecked. It was my task to subdue it, but this time, as before, Eurystheus wanted the beast captured alive. I set sail for Crete, knowing this was yet another test of both my strength and patience. The people of Crete were already familiar with the devastation. Entire fields were flattened and homes reduced to rubble. They spoke of the bull as a force of nature, an unstoppable beast with fire in its eyes. I made my way to the hills, where the bull was said to roam. It wasn't long before I heard it, the ground trembling beneath its hooves, a low bellowing echoing through the air. The Cretan bull was as massive as the stories claimed, its horns sharp and menacing. The moment the bull saw me, it charged. Its sheer size made the earth quake with each step, and I had only seconds to react. I dodged to the side, just as its horns grazed past me, narrowly avoiding what could have been a fatal blow. The bull charged again, but this time I was ready. I waited until the last moment, then grabbed hold of its horns, using my strength to wrestle it to the ground. The struggle was fierce. The bull thrashed and roared, its hooves kicking up dust and rocks, but I held on, digging my heels into the earth, refusing to let go. It was a battle of wills, and in the end, I overpowered the beast, forcing it to submit. With the bull subdued, I bound it with ropes and prepared for the long journey back to Eurystheus. But before I left Crete, I was met by King Minos himself. Minos had once prized this bull, but now it was a creature of destruction, more curse than gift.
Heracles, no one has been able to tame the bull, not even my own men. You have done what none of us could. Take the beast and complete your labor, but know that its rage is no longer welcome here.
Minos' words echoed as I sailed back to the mainland, the bull tied securely to the deck. It was the first time I'd seen a king so grateful to be rid of a creature once sent by the gods themselves. When I returned with the bull in tow, Eurystheus' reaction was just as expected. Terrified of the creature, he ordered me to release it as quickly as possible. The The bull, once freed, rampaged off into the countryside, where it would eventually be captured by Theseus. I couldn't help but smile at the irony.
Heracles, your next labor will take you to Thrace, where you are to capture the man-eating mares of Diomedes. These horses are no ordinary creatures. They feed on the flesh of men, and their master, King Diomedes, keeps them as instruments of terror. I want them brought back to me alive.
The mares of Diomedes were infamous, wild, savage, and kept in Thrace by a king as bloodthirsty as his horses. They were no ordinary animals. They had been trained to feast on human flesh. This labor wasn't just about capturing horses. It was about stopping a tyrant who used these creatures to instill fear and control over his people. I traveled to Thrace, knowing this task would involve not only the beasts, but also a confrontation with the king who ruled them. When I arrived in Thrace, I could feel the tension in the air. The people lived in fear of King Diomedes and his man-eating horses, which he kept locked in iron stables near the palace. The mares were enormous, the eyes wild with madness, and the teeth sharp like wolves. The king's cruelty was well known. Diomedes ruled with an iron fist, and his mares were his most terrifying weapon, but I hadn't come to cower before him. I sought out Diomedes, confronting him in his palace. The man was as twisted as the stories described, with a cruel smile and no regard for human life. I had no time for his games. I grabbed my club and went straight to the stables, ready to face the challenge ahead. As soon as I entered the stables, the mares sensed my presence. They charged at me with a ferocity I hadn't expected, snarling, biting, their hoofs kicking up dust and dirt. I wrestled the first mare to the ground, using all my strength to keep it from biting me. Once subdued, I quickly moved on to the others, dodging their deadly jaw and binding them with ropes one by one. But the real challenge lay ahead, dealing with Diomedes. As I was capturing the last of the mares, Diomedes appeared, leading a group of his men to stop me. The battle that followed was swift but brutal. I overpowered Diomedes' soldiers with ease, but it was Diomedes himself who needed to be dealt with. I overpowered the king in combat, dragging him back to the stables. I threw Diomedes to his own horses. They devoured him without hesitation, leaving nothing behind but the silence of a tyrant's downfall. After Diomedes was gone, the mares, now calm and docile, were under my control. It was as if the curse of their madness had lifted with the death of their master. With the mares subdued, I set off on the long journey back to Eurystheus, knowing the danger had passed. Eurystheus was waiting as always, his smug look barely hiding the nervousness in his eyes. When he saw the mares, their eyes still wild but under control, he seemed to shrink back slightly.
You've done it again, Heracles. The mares, well, they are yours now. Take them far from here, lest they return to their savage ways. Now, your next labor will take you across the seas to the land of the Amazons. Your task is to bring back the belt of their queen, Hippolyta, a gift from Ares himself, a symbol of her power. But know this, the Amazons are fierce warriors, and they don't hand over their treasures easily.
The Amazons were known throughout the world for their skill in battle, and their queen, Hippolyta, was unmatched in both strength and leadership. I wasn't just walking into a fight, I was walking into their territory, where every step would be watched, every move calculated. When I arrived, the Amazons greeted me not with swords drawn, but with caution. They were curious, their eyes sharp. They led me to Queen Hippolyta, and it was clear from the moment I met her. This was a woman who commanded respect. The belt of Ares gleamed around her waist, but I wasn't here to take it by force, not if I didn't have to. When I stood before Hippolyta, I explained my labor. I couldn't believe it. She agreed to give me the belt, no battle required. We shook hands, warriors' hands, bound by respect. The labor was nearly complete and without a single blow struck. But Hera was watching. She wasn't about to let me walk away with an easy victory. Disguised as one of the Amazons, she whispered lies, spreading rumors among Hippolyta's warriors. Soon, the whispers turned to shouts.
Heracles has come to kidnap our queen. He's here to conquer us.
The Amazons, once willing to let me leave peacefully, now believed I was their enemy. The Amazons were fierce, and they came at me with everything they had. Their arrows darkened the sky, their swords gleamed in the sunlight. They fought with precision and skill, and I had no choice but to defend myself. I parried a blow here, dodged an arrow there. The battlefield was chaotic, Amazons surrounding me from all sides. My club swung in wide arcs, knocking weapons from their hands, but I held back, trying not to kill them. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were only fighting because of Hera's deceit. In the midst of the chaos, I saw Hippolyta, her sword drawn, trying to restore order, but just as she called for her warriors to stop, she was struck down by one of the panicked Amazons. My heart sank. Hippolyta had been honorable, but now, because of Hera, her life had been cut short. With the battle still raging around me, I grabbed the belt from Hippolyta's fallen body. This wasn't how I wanted to complete the labor, but there was no time to mourn. I had to finish the task and get out of there. I fought my way to the shore, arrows whizzing past me, and set sail back to Eurystheus. When I returned with the belt, Eurystheus was waiting, smug as ever.
So, you brought back the belt of Hippolyta. I didn't think you would survive the land of the Amazons. Tell me, how did their mighty queen fall to the likes of you?
I said nothing. There was no point in explaining how Hera's lies had turned a peaceful meeting into a bloody battle. Eurystheus didn't care about honor or respect, only that I had completed his labor. There was no victory here, just another piece of Hera's endless plot to break me.
On to your next task. It will take you to the edge of the world, beyond what any mortal man has seen. You are to fetch the cattle of Geryon, a fearsome giant with 3 bodies. His cattle graze on the island of Erythia, guarded by his herdsman and a 2-headed dog. Bring the cattle back to me, Heracles, if you can.
The cattle of Geryon weren't just guarded by a man or beast, but by Geryon himself, a giant with 3 bodies, each one as strong as the other. I set out across the Mediterranean, sailing for days until I reached the scorched deserts of Libya. The sun beat down on me relentlessly, and the heat was unbearable. As I traveled through the desert, I realized that I needed help crossing the great ocean to reach the island. Even I couldn't swim across an ocean, but I wasn't alone in this world. Helios, the sun god, was watching. Helios saw my struggle and appeared before me in his golden chariot pulled by fiery horses.
Heracles, you've ventured far, but no man can cross the ocean on foot. Take my golden cup and sail across the waters. It will carry you swiftly to the island where Geryon waits.
With Helios's golden cup, I sailed across the ocean in record time, the golden chariot boat cutting through the waves like nothing I'd ever seen before. Soon enough, the island of Erythea appeared on the horizon. As soon as I set foot on the island, I was greeted by Orthrus, the 2-headed dog, snarling and ready to attack. But I wasn't about to let a dog, even a monstrous one, stand in my way. I grabbed my club and, with one swift strike, I took down Orthrus before it had a chance to bite. The path to the kettle was clear, or so I thought. Orthrus' master, Eurytion, the herdsman of Geryon, came charging at me next. He wasn't as fearsome as the beast he commanded, but he was ready to fight. The battle was quick. Eurytion swung his staff at me, but I blocked it and knocked him to the ground. With the herdsman and the dog out of the way, I had only one more challenge, Geryon himself. Geryon wasn't like any other foe I'd faced before. With 3 bodies, each armed with a sword, he was 3 warriors in one. His steps shook the ground as he approached, and his 3 faces scowled with fury. He raised all 3 of his swords, charging at me with the force of a small army. But I wasn't backing down. Using my bow, I took aim and fired a single arrow, coated in the venom of the Hydra. It struck Geryon in one of his hearts, and his 3 bodies collapsed, the fight over before it had really begun. With Geryon defeated, I rounded up the cattle, massive red beasts that grazed peacefully now that their master was gone. But driving them all the way back to Eurystheus was no easy task. The journey was long, and Hera, never far from my path, sent a gadfly to scatter the herd, forcing me to chase them across the countryside. But after weeks of driving the cattle through mountains and valleys, I finally reached Eurystheus. When I arrived with the cattle, Eurystheus barely contained his shock. He had sent me to the edge of the world to fight a giant with 3 bodies, and yet here I was, alive and with the cattle in tow.
You've brought them back. Truly, no task is too great for you. But do not think your labors are over yet. The most difficult ones still remain. Heracles, your next labor takes you to the ends of the world once again. You are to bring me the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, a place where no mortal has ever ventured. These apples are a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera, guarded by the Hesperides nymphs and a 100-headed dragon, Ladon. I wish you luck, Heracles.
The golden apples weren't just a symbol of the god's favor, they were the property of Hera herself, guarded in a secret garden no mortal had ever seen. Eurystheus, as usual, had sent me on a task designed to break me, but I had no intention of failing, even if it meant facing a 100-headed dragon. The real challenge was knowing where to find the garden. No map existed, and the gods were tight-lipped about its location. So I set out to seek guidance from anyone who might help. After days of wandering, I came across Prometheus, the Titan, who had been punished by Zeus for giving fire to mankind. He was bound to a rock, his liver devoured daily by an eagle, only to regenerate by nightfall. I couldn't leave him to suffer. With one swift strike of my arrow, I killed the eagle that tortured him. Prometheus, grateful for his release, offered me valuable advice.
Thank you, Heracles. As a reward, I will tell you what you seek. The garden of the Hesperides lies far beyond the known world. But to retrieve the apples, you will need the help of the Titan, Atlas. He alone can reach them for you.
I journeyed to the western edge of the world, where Atlas stood holding up the sky on his massive shoulders. The sight of him towering over the landscape was awe-inspiring. His muscles strained as he bore the weight of the heavens, yet his eyes gleamed with cunning. Atlas, I need your help. I seek the golden apples of the Hesperides. If you retrieve them for me, I will bear the weight of the sky in your place while you go. Taking the weight of the heavens from Atlas was unlike anything I'd experienced before. The sheer pressure bore down on me, every muscle in my body screaming in protest as the sky threatened to crush me. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly as Atlas left to retrieve the apples. But true to his word, Atlas returned with the apples in hand. What he didn't expect, though, was how much he enjoyed his newfound freedom.
I have the apples, but why should I take the sky back? I think I'll let you hold it for a while longer.
Atlas thought he could outwit me, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it. That's fair, Atlas, but before you go, could you hold the sky for just a moment while I adjust my position? This weight is unbearable. The moment Atlas took the sky back onto his shoulders, I grabbed the apples and made my way back to Eurystheus. He had sent me on this impossible journey, expecting me to fail. But as always, I stood before him, victorious.
You've brought back the golden apples. Hera will not be pleased to hear this. Heracles, for your final labor, you must descend into the underworld and bring me Cerberus, the monstrous guard dog of Hades. You will not be allowed weapons, only your bare hands.
My heart pounded as I descended into the underworld. I had fought monsters, survived impossible odds, but this was the realm of the dead. The underworld was a place of darkness, shadows crawling across the walls, the air thick with despair. Souls drifted like smoke, whispering faint cries of longing, forever bound to Hades' domain. But I was not there for them. My target was Cerberus, the monstrous guardian of the gates, a beast whose very presence kept the dead in their place. I found Hades, the god of the underworld, waiting on his throne, eyes cold as stone.
If you wish to take Cerberus, you must do so without weapons. Capture him with your bare hands, and I will permit you to leave my realm with your life.
I nodded, feeling the enormity of the task ahead. The underworld was silent, save for the distant growl of the beast I had come to subdue. There, in the shadows, he emerged. Cerberus, more terrifying than I had imagined. His massive form was covered in thick, dark fur, muscles rippling beneath his hide. His 3 heads snarled in unison, their jaws snapping in the air, each set of fangs capable of tearing a man to pieces. Cerberus wasn't just a beast, he was a force of nature. I charged at him, my fist clenched. One of his heads lunged first, jaws snapping like a steel trap, but I sidestepped just in time, feeling the hot breath graze my shoulder. The second head came at me from the side, its fangs bared, but I caught it by the throat, using my weight to slam it into the ground. The third head snapped at my legs, its jaws locking around my ankle. Pain shot through me, but I gritted my teeth and twisted my body, kicking Cerberus hard enough to loosen his grip. His claws slashed at me, cutting through my skin, but I kept my focus. I threw myself at him again, tackling one of the heads. With a roar of defiance, I dug my heels into the ground, using all my strength to pin Cerberus's massive form beneath me. I yanked the heads toward the ground, tightening my grip until Cerberus's massive body began to submit. His snarls became growls, and his growls became whimpers. The fight was draining from him. I had done it. I had subdued the monstrous guardian of the dead. Bloodied and exhausted, I stood, pulling the chains around Cerberus's necks, leading the beast toward Hades.
You have done the impossible, Heracles. Cerberus is yours to take to the surface. But remember, he belongs to the Underworld. Once your task is complete, return him to his rightful place.
I didn't hesitate. With Cerberus subdued, I made my way back to the surface, dragging the mighty beast of the Underworld with me. When I arrived at Eurystheus' palace, the king's face turned white with terror.
Take it away. Take it back to the Underworld. The labor is complete. Just get that monster out of my sight.
With Cerberus subdued, I returned him to the Underworld as promised. The 12 labors were over. I had faced monsters, gods, and the very realm of the dead itself. And through it all, I had survived. The weight of the labors lifted from me, and I knew, at last I was free. But even in that moment of triumph, I could feel it in my bones. My story was not finished. Hera's grudge had not been quenched, and the gods still had plans for me.
He has survived. After everything, he still stands. The labors were supposed to destroy him, yet here he is, victorious. Zeus's bastard son, still breathing, still defying the gods. This is not the end. I will not rest until he suffers more than any mortal has ever suffered.
After years of wandering, I thought I had finally found peace. I met Deianira, a woman as strong in spirit as any warrior I had fought beside. She was beautiful, courageous, and most of all, she didn't fear me. In her eyes, I saw hope, the kind I had forgotten existed. We married, and for a time, it seemed that perhaps the gods had finally granted me peace. We traveled together, making a life far from the chaos of the world. But as always, peace for me was temporary, a fleeting dream that shattered with the whisper of Hera's name. One day, while traveling with Deianira, we came across a river too dangerous to cross. A centaur named Nessus appeared, offering to help carry Deianira across. I didn't trust him. There was something in his eyes that made my skin crawl. But Deianira, kind-hearted as she was, believed him. As Nessus carried her across the river, I saw his true intentions. He tried to abduct her. My rage was instant, my bow drawn without a second thought. The arrow I fired was no ordinary weapon. It had been dipped in the poison of the Hydra. It struck Nessus in the heart, and as he lay dying, he plotted his revenge.
Take my blood, Deianira, soak a tunic in it, and if you ever doubt Heracles' love, give it to him. It will ensure his loyalty forever.
I didn't hear his words. I was too focused on saving Deianira, not realizing the true danger was yet to come. Years passed, and though I loved Deianira with all my heart, the gods never allowed my life to remain peaceful. Hera's whispers reached her, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. She feared I had fallen in love with another woman, and in her desperation, she remembered Nessus' words. Without knowing the truth, Deianira soaked the tunic in the centaur's poisoned blood and gave it to me as a gift. I wore it without hesitation, trusting her completely. The moment the tunic touched my skin, I felt the fire of the Hydra's poison coursing through me. It burned like nothing I had ever experienced. My skin melted. I screamed in agony, ripping at the tunic, but it was too late. The poison had already seeped deep into my bones. I knew I was dying. There was no cure for Hydra's poison. Deianira hadn't meant to kill me, but the damage was done. As my skin burned and my muscles screamed in agony, I realized my time had come. I could not bear the suffering any longer. In a final act of strength, I climbed Mount Vita and built myself a funeral pyre. I lay upon it, ready to end the pain, my once mighty body, now ravaged by poison. As the flames consumed me, I felt something shift. Zeus, my father, the king of the gods, intervened. The flames of the pyre did not take me into the afterlife, as they should have. Instead, I felt the touch of immortality.
You have suffered enough, my son. You have proven your strength, your honor, and your perseverance. The time has come for you to join us among the gods.
The pain began to fade, replaced by a feeling of weightlessness. Athena herself carried me to Mount Olympus, where I was welcomed by the gods as one of their own. My mortal suffering was over. I had earned my place among the immortals. Even Hera, who had cursed me from birth, finally relented. In a gesture of peace, she gave me her daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth, as my wife. The rivalry that had defined my life was finally laid to rest. My story did not end with my death. It lives on in the tales told by mortals, in the strength of every warrior who faces impossible odds. Though I was born a man, I earned my place among the gods, and my name, Heracles, will echo through the ages long after the gods themselves are forgotten. Now you know my story and all the things I had to endure. My message to you is to keep moving forward, no matter the seemingly impossible obstacles in your way, because it always seems impossible until it's done. Thank you for watching. Until next time.